During today's McDantim troubleshooting video, we will be instructing you on 3 different types of pressure tests to determine whether or not your draft system has a gas leak. Warning: CO2 and nitrogen are asphyxiant gases. Be sure to consult your SDS before proceeding and make sure to facilitate the following test with at least 2 people. Before entering the keg room, listen for CO2 alarms and/or any audible leaks. Do not proceed with the test if you sense that there may be a significant leak or if you are uncomfortable performing the test procedure. Let's start with a preliminary pressure test which relies on the high-pressure nitrogen regulator cylinder pressure gauge. Step 1. Make sure the McDantim blender system is pressurized with both CO2 and nitrogen. Step 2. Close the ball valves on the outlet of the blender. Step 3. Observe the nitrogen cylinder pressure on the cylinder pressure gauge. Step 4. Close the valve on the nitrogen cylinder. Step 5. Watch the nitrogen cylinder pressure gauge. If there is a visual loss of pressure, this indicates a leak in the system on the gas supply side. Results should show on the gauge in 1 to 15 seconds. In other words, you have just leak checked every fitting from the nitrogen cylinder to the outlet ball valve on the blender. Leak intensity can be gauged by how quickly the nitrogen gauge needle drops. If there is no drop in pressure after about a minute, this indicates no leaking. If no leak is found during the first test, then it's time to move on to the second pressure test, which leak tests gas pressure downstream of the blender. Step 1. Make sure to repressurize the nitrogen system by turning on the valve on the nitrogen cylinder. Let the system pressurize for a few seconds before moving on to the next step. Step 2. Open both ball valves on the blender. Step 3. Observe the nitrogen cylinder pressure on the cylinder pressure gauge. Step 4. Close the valve on the nitrogen cylinder. Step 5. Watch the nitrogen cylinder pressure gauge. If there is a visual loss in pressure, this indicates a leak downstream of the blender in the secondary regulators or keg couplers. Due to the fact that there may be a leak on both lines, we need to close one of the ball valves and repeat the test. Start with closing the left ball valve on the left side of the blender and repeat the previous 4 steps. By doing this, we are specifically testing the right side mixed gas line of the blender and the secondary regulators and keg couplers downstream. Now switch sides. Close the right side ball valve that was just open and open the ball valve on the left side of the blender. Repeat the previous 4 steps as you did before. By doing this, we are specifically testing the left side of the blender and downstream equipment. If any leaks are present on the downstream lines, it is time for the third and final test, which can be used to find individual secondary regulator and/or keg coupler leaks. For this example, let's assume the left side of the Trumix double blender is leaking. 12 beers are in service. There are 4 regulator banks of 3 regulators and couplers each. The right side ball valve on the blender is closed. The left side ball valve on the blender is open. Close all 12 of the individual regulator valves that supply gas to the keg coupler. Now watch the tank pressure gauge. A decrease in leak rate indicates that a jumper or coupler in the system is leaking. If the leak rate remains the same, a secondary regulator is probably leaking. Now let's repeat the test on individual regulator banks and regulators. Again, don't forget to repressurize the nitrogen cylinder and follow the same 4 steps as you've done before. Now, start at the regulator furthest from the gas supply and open its ball valve. Generally, when diagnosing jumper coupler leaks supplied by banks of regulators or single regulators within a bank, it is best to start at the end of the line and work your way towards the gas supply. This is where it is especially helpful to have at least 2 people facilitating this test. While one person turns on the individual regulator valves, have the other person keep an eye on the main nitrogen cylinder regulator. Any change in the leak rate indicates the regulator and corresponding jumper coupler that was most recently opened is leaking. Soapy water can now be used to find the leak on an individual regulator or K-coupler. Regular dish soap is suitable and safe to use. Do not use caustic or corrosive heavy sanitizers for leak testing. Depending on the intensity of the leak, the size and frequency of the bubbles will vary. Thank you for taking time to watch this McDantim troubleshooting video on pressure testing your blender unit and draft beer system gas supply. If you have any additional questions or concerns, please contact McDantim at 888-735-5607.